Millionaire ignored pregnant wife. At a family event, Mistress took her place. But karma was watching. A poised woman in an elegant gown stands alone at a grand family gathering, her hand resting gently on her rounded belly. Across the room, her millionaire husband entertains his new flame, beaming with pride and barely acknowledging the wife who carries his unborn child. Murmurs spread through the crowd, whispers of betrayal, simmering resentment, and shameful secrets. Tension crackles in the air as relatives exchange curious glances. Little does anyone suspect that this night, meant to celebrate unity, will mark the unraveling of a carefully crafted facade. By the end of it all, hearts will be shattered and a hard lesson awaits those responsible. Nicholas Beaumont was born into privilege. His father, Jonathan Beaumont, had been a savvy investor who moved millions through banking institutions such as Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, multiplying the family fortune for generations to come. Nicholas grew up attending elite boarding schools, rubbing shoulders with children from old money families. While his peers went on to study finance or law in prestigious universities, Nicholas enrolled in Harvard Business School, fully intending to carry on his father's legacy. However, hidden behind that veneer of ambition lay a burning restlessness. Nicholas wasn't satisfied by the notion of merely managing inherited wealth. He yearned to become an industry titan, forging a legacy that was distinctly his. Eager to prove his worth, he embarked on a series of risky investments in tech startups, real estate developments, and high-end luxury ventures. Some ventures crashed spectacularly, but many soared enough to cement his status as one of the most talked about young entrepreneurs in the city. It was at a charity function held at the Ritz-Carlton in Chicago, a fundraiser for underprivileged youth, that Nicholas first caught sight of Ariana. She was volunteering at the registration desk, wearing a simple black dress offset by a single string of pearls. Her warm smile and unassuming demeanor stood out in a sea of ostentatious attire and glittering jewelry. Intrigued, Nicholas introduced himself, expecting Ariana to be starstruck by his name. Instead, she politely thanked him for attending the fundraiser, then directed him toward the silent auction without another word. This mild dismissal, which he was utterly unaccustomed to, lit a spark in Nicholas. The more Ariana resisted the allure of his money and power, the more he chased her. She was a school teacher who believed in the importance of giving back to the community. Her passions were reading, volunteering, and shaping young minds. She cared little for the glitz and glamour of high society, focusing instead on meaningful connections and her dream of opening an educational foundation someday. Friends and family watched in amazement as Nicholas transformed. In Ariana's presence, he was softer, kinder. He donated to local schools, launched scholarships, and started a reading program for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds. Though Ariana's compassion drew him in, she also had a quiet strength that he both admired and found perplexing. She didn't fawn over his wealth. Instead, she expected him to maintain the same sincerity she offered to those around her. Their courtship was brisk. Within a year, Nicholas proposed with a modest Bulgari ring. Though it was still worth a small fortune, it was understated by high society standards. Ariana accepted tearfully, moved by his promise to support her dreams. They married in a quiet ceremony at a historical garden rather than an opulent cathedral. Many of Nicholas's well-heeled relatives dismissed it as an odd choice, but Ariana's family and friends found the ceremony perfect. For a while, the couple seemed to balance each other out. Ariana grounded Nicholas's ambition with her steady moral compass, while he introduced her to the resources and connections that could help expand her philanthropic endeavors. They were, by all appearances, the perfect match, one guided by an earnest passion for doing good, the other fueled by the drive to conquer the business world, but anchored by genuine love. Little did Ariana know how swiftly and tragically that balance could shift. Over time, the feverish ambitions that had once dazzled Ariana began morphing into arrogance. Nicholas's success in real estate development soared when he sold a trio of luxury high-rises in prime locations for extraordinary profits. The media hailed him as a wunderkind. He was featured in Forbes and interviewed on financial news channels. He reveled in the limelight, drawn to the sensation of being revered and envied. Simultaneously, Ariana found her time increasingly consumed by charitable initiatives. Buoyed by her husband's monetary contributions, she launched literacy campaigns, school construction projects in underprivileged neighborhoods, and career guidance programs for disadvantaged teens. Each new initiative demanded months of planning, fundraising, and personal involvement. She found great joy in this work, though she couldn't help noticing that Nicholas became less and less interested in discussing her projects. Tensions flared whenever she asked him to spend more time helping in community centers or reading to children. He'd grumble about the futility of his presence there. What difference would it make if he showed up to read stories for a single afternoon? She'd protest that his influence alone could get more donors on board. He often dismissed her pleas as naive, claiming that focusing on large investments in global markets would have a more significant ripple effect. Ariana never doubted his sincere desire to do good, but she worried that money had eclipsed compassion somewhere along the way. It was around this time that Nicholas hired Vanessa Ellis as his executive assistant. With a master's degree from a prestigious university, Vanessa presented herself as every bit the polished professional. She was witty, poised, and impeccably dressed. Ariana noticed the curious sparkle in Vanessa's eyes whenever Nicholas walked into the room, but she tried to dismiss it. Nicholas's position invited attention, and Ariana believed he could handle professional flirtation with composure. Yet, subtle signs began to surface. Nicholas worked later and later. He frequently left for sudden business trips that Ariana only heard about hours before his flights. His phone buzzed at odd hours with messages and calls from overseas partners, or so he claimed. He spent fewer weekends at home, preferring to golf with colleagues or attend exclusive events. Ariana attempted to be supportive. She understood that success demanded sacrifice. But in quieter moments, doubts gnawed at her. His once affectionate gestures dwindled. Instead of hugging her when he returned home, he'd go straight to the computer to fire off urgent emails. Instead of listening eagerly to her day's events, he'd nod absently, eyes glazing over with disinterest. She reminded herself that every relationship had phases, and that Nicholas still loved her. Perhaps this was just a passing season of intense work. Noticing her restlessness, Ariana's best friend Liz tried to reassure her. "It's the nature of corporate life," Liz would say over their weekly coffee. "He's building something big. Just keep an eye on him, though. Trust is important, but don't ignore your instincts." Ariana smiled, but her unease only grew. One night, Ariana discovered a single lipstick-stained wineglass in Nicholas's study. It was a shade of deep red that Ariana never wore. She chose not to confront him that evening, knowing he'd just deny any wrongdoing. She reasoned that picking a fight wouldn't solve the underlying problems, but the seed of suspicion rooted itself in her heart. Amid the rising tension, a surprising piece of news arrived. Ariana was pregnant. When the pregnancy test displayed the positive results, she felt an overwhelming mixture of joy and trepidation. This child symbolized hope, a chance to rebuild their bond. Nicholas, for his part, reacted with apparent excitement, sweeping Ariana off her feet in a celebratory hug and promising he'd be there for every step of the journey. For a while, his interest in Ariana's well-being returned. He cleared his schedule to take her to doctor's appointments, hired a top-tier nutritionist, and insisted on only the best prenatal care. Ariana could almost forget her suspicions in the warm glow of Nicholas's renewed affection. She prayed that the child growing inside her had stirred a dormant tenderness in his heart. Yet, as her belly grew, so did Nicholas's empire. He began raking in higher profits from an upscale condo project. He boasted about building an international brand, maybe launching branches in Dubai or Singapore, and Ariana worried that his renewed attention on her was just a passing fancy, overshadowed by the next big deal. She tried to engage him in discussions about their future as a family, but he'd brush it off, saying they'd figure it out in time. Ariana devoted herself to creating a peaceful environment at home. She transformed a spare bedroom into a cozy nursery, painting soft, calming murals of birds and trees on the walls. She carefully chose baby clothes, read parenting books, and dreamt about the day she and Nicholas would hold their child together. She overlooked the extra hours he spent with Vanessa, who was now more than just an assistant. She had graduated to a permanent fixture by Nicholas's side at networking events and corporate galas. When Ariana inquired about Vanessa's presence, Nicholas dismissed any concerns. "She's indispensable," he'd say. "She's handling large client accounts now, and we're expanding globally. She's part of the reason I can afford all of this for our child's future." Ariana longed to believe him, but those old doubts still churned in the pit of her stomach. Then came the invitation to the big family event, a grand reunion organized by Nicholas's parents to celebrate their extended lineage. Jonathan and his wife, Margaret, decided to host the gathering at the family's spacious estate by the lake. Relatives from across the country would attend, with some flying in from Europe and Asia. Ariana was relieved at the idea of a more personal setting. She prayed that being surrounded by family would be a chance for Nicholas to remember that life was about more than board meetings. In the week leading up to the family event, Ariana's excitement mingled with growing anxiety. She selected a simple, flowing emerald green gown that accentuated her pregnant figure. She hoped Nicholas would appreciate the color emerald was one of his favorites, and he used to say it reminded him of her eyes. She also hoped that family love and warmth would make him realize how much he'd neglected her. But on the morning of the reunion, Nicholas was unusually distant. He spent hours on calls, rummaging through documents with Vanessa in the living room. Ariana overheard bits of their conversation about a massive business acquisition that needed urgent attention. She tried to ignore the twinge in her chest when she saw Vanessa leaning in a bit too close, pointing at numbers on a spreadsheet. They piled into Nicholas's Bentley late. Ariana felt unsettled. He hardly spoke a word to her during the ride, focusing instead on phone calls. When they arrived at the estate, extended family members greeted them with open arms, showering Ariana with compliments about her radiant glow. For the first hour, at least, Ariana felt a semblance of joy. Nicholas kissed her cheek perfunctorily and vanished into the crowd, explaining he needed to catch up with some uncles and cousins. The estate's main hall was a sea of expensive suits, designer dresses, and clinking champagne glasses. Ariana watched Nicholas from across the room, noticing how he seemed enthralled in conversation with Vanessa, who stood impossibly close. The rest of the extended family, including Jonathan and Margaret, milled around them, but they appeared more or less oblivious, or simply uninterested in intervening. Ariana told herself that it was just business talk after all. Vanessa was his right hand in all financial dealings. Still, the scene chipped away at Ariana's composure. During dinner, the family was seated at multiple long tables. Ariana found herself assigned to one, while Nicholas and Vanessa sat at another, presumably so Nicholas could talk shop with influential relatives who handled large-scale investments. Each time Ariana tried to catch Nicholas's gaze, he seemed deliberately preoccupied deep in conversation, raising a toast or switching seats. It was as if she no longer existed. By the time dessert was served, Ariana's stomach churned not from pregnancy, but from heartbreak. She excused herself, wandering out onto the terrace, where the lake's moonlit surface offered a quiet escape from the chatter. She was wiping away silent tears when one of Nicholas's cousins, Grace, approached her gently. "Ah, you all right, Ariana?" Grace asked in a hushed tone. Forcing a smile, Ariana replied, "Just needed some fresh air. It's stuffy inside." Grace offered a sympathetic glance. "We've all noticed Nicholas paying a lot of attention to that assistant of his. He should be at your side, especially in your condition." Ariana swallowed hard. "It's complicated, but I appreciate you checking on me, Grace." Just then, loud laughter erupted from the hall. Ariana turned to see Nicholas escorting Vanessa out onto the makeshift dance floor. The band struck up a lively tune, and the two of them twirled under the chandelier's glow as the crowd clapped. Ariana stood frozen, her heart pounding. She'd hoped for one dance, just one, that might remind her husband of the day they'd slow danced at their wedding. But in that humiliating moment, he'd chosen his assistant over her. Unable to bear it, Ariana walked back inside to a quiet corner, trying to hide the tears in her eyes. It was almost time for the big family toast, the moment when Jonathan would give a welcome speech. Ariana braced herself, telling her unborn child that everything would be okay, but she couldn't quell the sinking feeling that nothing was right anymore. Jonathan Beaumont, dignified in a bespoke suit, stood to address the gathering. He praised the Beaumont lineage, their accomplishments in business, philanthropy, and the arts. He introduced cousins who had become renowned architects, relatives who were celebrated authors, and a nephew who was an Olympic athlete. Then, in a gesture of familial pride, he mentioned Nicholas's recent successes, enumerating his real estate triumphs. People applauded enthusiastically. Jonathan then cleared his throat. "Most importantly," he continued, "Nicholas is expecting his first child with his lovely wife, Ariana. We look forward to welcoming a new Beaumont into this world." Ariana glanced around, expecting her husband to step forward and acknowledge the moment. Instead, she saw Nicholas locked in conversation with Vanessa, seemingly unmoved by Jonathan's words. Vanessa had the nerve to whisper something into his ear, and they both laughed quietly. The sense of betrayal that swelled in Ariana's chest threatened to overwhelm her. Jonathan looked around, searching for Nicholas, and found him. "Nicholas, would you like to say a few words about your upcoming fatherhood?" All eyes turned to Nicholas. He awkwardly let go of Vanessa's arm, straightened his tie, and cleared his throat. "Yes, well," he began, stepping up with a forced smile. "I'm excited, of course. Thank you, Dad, for hosting this incredible reunion." He glanced at Ariana fleetingly, then turned to the crowd. "We have big plans ahead, both personally and in business." Polite applause followed. Ariana knew it was her turn to speak, but her throat felt impossibly tight. She stood there, her heart racing, and realized she was alone in this. Nicholas made no move to guide her or invite her to the front. Everyone was watching. The next moment felt like an eternity, and she fought the tears threatening to spill. Summoning her courage, she managed a small nod and mouthed a thank you to Jonathan for the acknowledgement. Then she slunk back into the shadows, desperate to disappear. At that moment, Vanessa stepped forward, introduced herself confidently as the executive assistant who was proud to be part of Nicholas's achievements. She added something about working day and night to ensure the success of upcoming projects. The assembled relatives politely applauded. Ariana nearly choked on her frustration. Vanessa was up there soaking in the family's approval, while Ariana, the pregnant wife, stood alone. None of the older relatives, not even Margaret, stepped in to rectify the situation. Later, as the evening drew to a close, Ariana found Nicholas in the corner of the estate's library. He was discussing new opportunities with Vanessa while swirling a glass of whiskey. Ariana approached timidly, heart pounding. Vanessa offered a brief, smug glance before stepping away to answer a phone call. Ariana took a trembling breath. "Nicholas, we need to talk." He looked at his watch impatiently. "Can it wait until we get home? I'm trying to finalize a deal with Vanessa." Ariana's voice quavered, but she pushed on. "I'm your wife. I'm pregnant with your child. You spent the entire night ignoring me, dancing with Vanessa, letting her stand in my place when your father introduced our baby to everyone. Don't you realize how humiliating this is for me?" Nicholas sighed. "It's not what it looks like, Ariana. Vanessa is just being supportive while I handle crucial business. You know how critical this stage is for our expansion. You should be more understanding." Ariana's eyes flooded with tears. "Understanding? I've been trying to be understanding for months. You barely talk to me. You never attend my medical appointments anymore. He cut her off, his voice turning cold. "You're overreacting, Ariana. You chose to spend time on your charities and children's programs. I'm building something. One day, you'll thank me for the life our child will have." Trembling with indignation, Ariana mustered her final words. "Remember what you're doing right now, Nicholas. Because it won't be me who regrets it someday, you will." He glared at her, then turned and walked away, calling after Vanessa. Ariana stood there, eyes brimming, feeling more alone than ever. She knew in that moment that something irrevocable had cracked in their relationship. Ariana retreated home in a separate car, having asked her friend Liz to drive her. She stared out the window in silence, an ache in her chest she couldn't soothe. Over the following week, she reached out to Nicholas repeatedly, hoping to salvage something of their marriage. He either deflected or repeated the same tired excuses: "Work is crazy right now," or "We'll talk later." Meanwhile, Ariana's pregnancy advanced. She woke up each morning to her child's kicks, which served as a bittersweet reminder of the life growing inside her. Though she saw glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with whenever Nicholas bothered to ask about her health, those glimpses were fewer and farther between. Vanessa, on the other hand, became more brazen. Rumors began circulating that the two were spotted at exclusive restaurants, checking into luxury hotels allegedly for business. Ariana confronted Nicholas, desperate for an honest conversation. In a heated argument, he insisted, "We're meeting clients. Vanessa's just playing the part of a representative. It's all about appearances in these deals. But why must it be her by your side? Why not one of the numerous other employees you have?" Ariana demanded. Nicholas shrugged. "Because she's the most competent. She's earned my trust, and she's integral to the company. I can't demote her just because you're jealous." Each conversation eroded Ariana's faith. She found herself sitting alone in the nursery, tears rolling down her cheeks, wondering how the man she loved had become so callous. She considered leaving, but the thought of raising a child on her own filled her with fear. The doctor advised her to avoid stress, warning that high anxiety could impact the baby's health. Attempting to calm herself, Ariana focused on completing each day, telling the baby stories about the world she hoped to create for them, a world filled with kindness and love, two virtues that seemed in short supply from Nicholas. Unexpectedly, an unexpected source of comfort appeared: Nicholas's mother, Margaret. Although Margaret had initially seemed aloof, she reached out to Ariana one afternoon, inviting her for tea at the Beaumont's penthouse overlooking the city. Ariana arrived, apprehensive, unsure if this was a pity gesture or something genuine. Margaret greeted her warmly. "Ariana, dear, I'm sorry for what happened at the family gathering. I was so busy attending to other relatives that I failed to notice how Nicholas treated you. But afterward, I heard things that troubled me." Ariana's eyes brimmed with tears. "I don't know how to make him see reason. He's shutting me out." Margaret sighed, stirring her tea. "Jonathan, and I have tried to speak with him, but he's always been headstrong. I suspect Vanessa's presence is more than professional. I can't say for sure, but the way he looks at her, it worries me." Ariana felt a lump in her throat. "I've tried everything. And with the baby coming, She couldn't finish her sentence, too choked up by the weight of it all. Margaret reached across, patting Ariana's hand. "Listen to me carefully. If Nicholas continues on this path, you must protect yourself and your child. You have every right to fight for your marriage, but never at the expense of your own well-being." They spent the afternoon discussing Ariana's hopes for the baby, her fears, and her heartbreak. Margaret offered resources a lawyer's contact, just in case Ariana ever needed advice on prenuptial clauses or child support. Ariana left the penthouse feeling somewhat validated, though the notion of having to contemplate legal recourse left a bitter taste in her mouth. As Ariana's due date approached, Nicholas and Vanessa traveled even more. They flew to Dubai for a conference, then hopped to Singapore for negotiations. Ariana felt pangs of panic whenever she thought about going into labor while Nicholas was halfway around the world with his mistress. One evening, Ariana mustered the courage to check Nicholas's phone. She found text messages filled with suspicious mentions of late-night meetings and private dinners. One of the most damning messages read, "We need more time to ourselves, away from the prying eyes," signed by Vanessa with a heart emoji. Ariana's hands shook. She snapped photos of these messages and emailed them to herself, uncertain of her next step, but feeling an urgent need to document. She confronted Nicholas as soon as he returned home. "Tell me the truth about you and Vanessa." He looked at her, eyes flashing defensively. "I told you already, it's just business." Ariana hurled the phone at his feet, open to the incriminating conversation. His face paled for a split second, then hardened. "You went through my phone? That's a new low." She pressed on, tears streaming down her face. "Don't turn this on me. I am your wife. I'm carrying your child. I have a right to know if you're cheating on me." Nicholas stared at the messages, lips pressed into a thin line. "Fine, Vanessa and I have been close, but it's not what you think." "We haven't," Ariana erupted. "Don't lie to me. You told her you wanted time away from prying eyes. You humiliated me in front of our entire family, and now you have the audacity to play victim." He took a deep breath, seemingly torn between guilt and anger. "You haven't been present for me either, Ariana. You're always caught up in your charities and your teacher's dreams. Vanessa's been there for me, supporting me in my business endeavors. It just happened." Ariana's head reeled. "Is that supposed to justify this betrayal?" He reached out to her, but she recoiled. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, perhaps meaning it in his own twisted way. But Ariana's anger only flared. "Our child will be born any day now, and you're gallivanting with another woman. I feel like I don't even know you anymore." That night, Ariana slept in the guest room. Nicholas left early the next morning, claiming urgent matters at the office. She sat on the bed, silent tears tracking down her cheeks, wondering how she had come to share a roof with someone who possessed so little conscience. A week before Ariana's due date, Nicholas's parents organized a small dinner at their private country club, an intimate setting with just close relatives. Margaret insisted Ariana attend, hoping it would encourage Nicholas to make amends. Ariana, too exhausted to protest, reluctantly agreed. She slipped on a comfortable maternity dress, her belly now unmistakably round, and braced herself for another evening of forced civility. As soon as they arrived, Ariana noticed Vanessa in a corner, chatting with Jonathan. The older man wore a tight smile, clearly not entirely comfortable with her presence. Ariana's pulse quickened. Why was Vanessa here at a family dinner? She locked eyes with Margaret, who mirrored her confusion. Ariana forced herself to greet a few cousins, then found Nicholas leaning against the bar, sipping a scotch. She approached him quietly. Why is Vanessa here? This was supposed to be a family gathering. Nicholas tossed back the rest of his drink. She's coordinating a major deal with my father. It's business, Ariana. She shook her head, feeling a surge of nausea. Does she have to be here at a private dinner with your pregnant wife? You're crossing a line, Nicholas. Before he could respond, the dinner bell chimed. They were ushered into a private dining room. Ariana was seated on one side of the table, Nicholas and Vanessa on the other, as if to twist the knife further. The meal progressed stiffly. Ariana pushed her food around her plate. Nerves shot. Partway through, Margaret stood. I'd like to raise a toast to Ariana. She's been the heart and soul of our family's philanthropic branch. We're all excited for the soon-to-arrive baby, and I want everyone here to know how proud we are of her strength, grace, and unwavering dedication. A round of claps followed. Ariana forced a small smile, grateful that Margaret acknowledged her. She glanced at Nicholas, silently begging him to seize the moment to honor her, or at least shift his seat. But he remained glued to Vanessa's side. After dinner, they regrouped in the lounge area for coffee. Ariana excused herself to the restroom. Just as she was about to return, she heard voices drifting through a half-open door. She recognized Nicholas's tone, urgent and hushed. I'm so close to finalizing the biggest deal of my career. Once that's done, we'll be set for life, he told Vanessa. Vanessa's voice came next, sultry and confident. So when are you going to cut Ariana loose? You've said for months that you want to be with me. Ariana's heart lurched. She pressed closer, straining to hear Nicholas's reply. He sighed. I can't just leave her right now. The baby, my family, my mother would lose her mind. Besides, a messy divorce would hurt the public image. Let's wait until after the baby's born and things settle down. Vanessa let out a soft laugh. I'm tired of waiting, Nicholas. I'm not your side dish. If you want me to stick around, you better make things happen soon. Ariana's legs nearly gave way. She clutched the wall for support, breathing in shallow gasps. Every fiber of her being wanted to burst in and call them out, but the shock pinned her. She tiptoed back down the hallway, tears streaming down her face. A wave of dizziness hit, and she braced herself against a small table to avoid collapsing. Pressing a hand to her belly, she whispered a silent vow to her unborn child. They would never be trapped in a loveless environment. When Ariana reached home later that night, having insisted on leaving the dinner early, she confronted Nicholas. I heard your conversation with Vanessa. He froze, keys in hand. What conversation? In the lounge. About cutting me loose after the baby is born? Ariana spat, voice trembling. That you're worried about your public image, but ready to throw me away like a worn-out toy. Nicholas dropped the keys on the table, turning pale. Ariana, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've already planned out my departure, haven't you? Just waiting for the baby to arrive so it doesn't damage your reputation. He said nothing, chest rising and falling heavily. Guilt warred with pride on his face. I never said I'd abandon you or the baby. Vanessa just wants me to. Stop, Ariana nearly shouted. She felt a sharp pain in her stomach, though she tried to ignore it. I will not be humiliated any longer. Either you fix this, end whatever you have with Vanessa, and show me the respect I deserve, or I leave. Nicholas stared at her. Ariana, calm down. We can talk. I'm done talking. Choose now. His silence was deafening. Ariana felt her world crumble. She turned away, tears streaking her cheeks, and began gathering her belongings, clothes, documents, anything she could stuff into a suitcase. Nicholas hovered near the door, clearly conflicted, but he didn't stop her. She took that as her answer. She called Liz, who raced over to help. Within an hour, Ariana was in Liz's car, sobbing as they pulled out of the driveway. She felt a mixture of rage and devastation that bordered on physical pain. Nicholas never once emerged to plead with her to stay. Ariana moved into a modest apartment. Liz helped her find. She tried to find solace in the impending birth, telling herself that from this point on, she would fight for a healthy, loving environment for her child. Margaret reached out, offering emotional support, and even Jonathan made a polite inquiry about her well-being, though Ariana sensed it was more about familial duty than genuine concern. Just days later, Ariana went into labor. Liz rushed her to the hospital in the early morning hours. As contractions racked her body, Ariana refused to inform Nicholas. He had made his choice, and she owed him nothing at that moment. The hours passed in a blur of pain, sweat, and tears, until finally Ariana delivered a healthy baby boy. She held her son, tears streaming down her cheeks, overwhelmed by the purity of his presence. All the heartbreak and betrayal faded momentarily as she marveled at the tiny life in her arms. Liz snapped a photo, capturing Ariana's radiant smile despite her tear-stained cheeks. That photo would become a symbol of new beginnings. Ariana had no idea that Nicholas was just outside the delivery room. Margaret had informed him once she knew Ariana was in labor. Nicholas arrived, but Ariana refused to let him in. She heard him argue with hospital staff, claiming he had a right to see his wife, but Ariana instructed the nurses to keep him away. Eventually, Nicholas stormed off, furious and confused. Later that evening, after Ariana had rested, Margaret entered gently, carrying flowers. She knelt by Ariana's bedside, looking at the newborn. "He's beautiful," Margaret whispered. "Nicholas wants to see the baby." Ariana pressed her lips together, holding her son protectively. "Tell him he can visit once we're discharged. For now, I need peace." Margaret nodded, placing a soft kiss on her grandson's forehead. "I understand," she said quietly, acknowledging the heartbreak that had led them here. Leaving the hospital a few days later, Ariana was determined to start anew. She named her son Alexander. She took the baby to her cozy apartment, facing the stark reality of single motherhood. Margaret visited often, bringing groceries and offering moral support. Ariana's own parents lived out of state, but they promised to come soon. Nicholas began bombarding Ariana's phone with messages. Some were angry, accusing her of shutting him out. Others were almost pleading, asking if they could talk. One day, Ariana answered in exhaustion, letting him see Alexander for the first time in her apartment's small living room. He held the tiny infant awkwardly, tears glistening in his eyes. Ariana's heart twisted despite her anger. She remembered the man she loved, the father of her child. But Nicholas soon revealed he hadn't come solely out of paternal devotion. "I need to talk to you about the future," he muttered. "I've spoken to my lawyer. We can draft an amicable arrangement." Ariana's stomach flipped. "You're talking about a divorce?" He shifted uncomfortably. "We could remain married, but the tension is. This can't go on. Vanessa is..." The mention of Vanessa set Ariana off. "You're still with her, even after everything." He looked away. "She's important to me. I won't deny it." Then he fixed his gaze on Ariana, a flicker of shame crossing his face. "But I want to do right by Alexander. Financially, you'll be supported. Anything you need." Ariana stared at her son, tears stinging her eyes. "Money can't replace a father's presence, Nicholas. And it certainly doesn't erase what you've done." They argued back and forth until Nicholas left, exasperated. Ariana sank into her couch, cradling her son, heart broken anew. Despite the turmoil, Ariana resolved not to be consumed by bitterness. She began therapy to cope with postpartum emotions and the marital collapse. She started volunteering again, with Alexander in tow, reading to children at the community center. Friends and neighbors reached out, offering help with errands and babysitting. Slowly, Ariana felt a network of compassion forming around her. Word spread about Nicholas's blatant affair. Even in high society circles, tongues wagged, investors raised eyebrows, while some brushed it off as a personal matter, others questioned his judgment. Rumors also flew that Nicholas was siphoning company funds to lavish gifts on Vanessa Aruma. Ariana didn't believe until she confirmed it with an accounting ledger Margaret discreetly showed her. Still, Ariana tried to maintain a semblance of peace. She refused to engage in public mudslinging, focusing instead on building a safe environment for Alexander. She visited a lawyer to discuss custody, child support, and the possibility of divorce. The lawyer explained her rights and assured her that the prenuptial agreement was fair enough that Ariana would be well provided for. Yet Ariana felt conflicted about relying on Nicholas's money. She wanted independence, but she also had Alexander's future to consider. A pivotal confrontation occurred a few months later, when Ariana took Alexander for a routine check-up at a pediatrician's office. She spotted Vanessa in the waiting area, wearing oversized sunglasses, tapping away on her phone. Ariana felt her pulse spike. She asked the receptionist if there might be some mistake. Why was Vanessa there? The receptionist shrugged, saying Vanessa had an appointment for someone else. A few minutes passed, and Nicholas strolled in. Ariana's breath caught. He wasn't there for Alexander's appointment. He was there for someone else, Vanessa. Ariana's mind whirled. Could Vanessa be pregnant? Her hands shook as she clutched Alexander's baby carrier. The tension was impossible to ignore. Nicholas turned pale when he saw Ariana, quickly ushering Vanessa into a corner. Ariana stared them down, her heart pounding. This was too much. She'd endured the humiliation, the betrayal, the heartbreak. Now, to see them possibly expecting a child together while Ariana was still healing was more than she could bear. She approached them, voice trembling with fury. "You've got some nerve showing up here with her." Vanessa coolly pulled off her sunglasses. "We have every right to be here. Don't make a scene." Ariana nearly lost her composure. "Don't you dare talk about making a scene. You hijacked my life, my marriage, and now you stroll around acting like you own Nicholas. You've turned him against his own child." Nicholas held up his hands defensively. "This isn't the place for a fight, Ariana." Alexander started to fuss. Sensing his mother's distress, Ariana took a deep breath, tears threatening to spill. "I'm done letting you walk all over me." She turned on her heel and marched out, Alexander wailing in her arms. Outside, she broke down, sobbing, as she strapped her son into the car seat. She felt a wave of hatred so strong it frightened her. She had never hated anyone before, but Vanessa had crossed every boundary. Not long after, strange whispers began circulating about Nicholas's finances. Several of his real estate projects had gone over budget, and rumors claimed he was taking money from one venture to pay off the debts of another, a dangerous game of corporate juggling. Ariana paid little attention initially, more focused on her own healing. She resumed teaching part-time, determined to carve out an identity beyond her marriage. But then Margaret visited her apartment with alarming news. "Nicholas is in trouble," she said, wringing her hands. One of his major projects in Dubai fell through, and he borrowed heavily against his assets to keep it afloat. Investors are pulling out. Ariana's heart pounded. "Why are you telling me this?" Margaret sighed. "I thought you should know. There might be legal ramifications. People are talking about potential fraud. Nicholas insists it's just a setback, but we're all worried." Ariana felt conflicting emotions. She once would have rushed to help him, but now her bitterness lingered. Still, Nicholas was Alexander's father. If he went down, what would that mean for her son? The following week, newspapers ran headlines. "Prominent real estate mogul Nicholas Beaumont under investigation for financial misconduct." Journalists dug into suspicious transactions. Business partners sued for breach of contract. Ariana watched the meltdown from a distance, bracing for the blowback. Part of her couldn't help feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. Karma was, indeed, watching. In the midst of the scandal, Vanessa assumed a bold new role. She became Nicholas's unofficial spokesperson. She appeared at press conferences, always at his side, claiming that everything was a misunderstanding and that Nicholas would clear his name. Ariana heard that Vanessa had moved into Nicholas's penthouse, brazenly replacing Ariana's presence there. But even as Vanessa flaunted her status, behind closed doors, she was panicking. She'd expected a life of luxury, not public scrutiny and potential bankruptcy. Rumors circulated that she was pressuring Nicholas to fix this or risk losing her. Ariana learned this through a mutual acquaintance, who also mentioned that Vanessa was not pregnant. It was a false alarm. Ariana felt relief for a moment, swiftly replaced by anger at the drama that had upended her life. Sometime later, Ariana received a message from Margaret. "Nicholas wants to see you. He's in a very bad place." Ariana hesitated. She had no desire to be pulled into his mess. Still, she agreed, mostly out of concern for how the fiasco might affect their son. She met Nicholas in a dingy cafe, a sharp contrast to the lavish restaurants he once patronized. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes. As Ariana sipped coffee, he explained how quickly the empire had crumbled. He'd used questionable loans to fund expansions, siphoned money into personal accounts, and cut shady deals to keep afloat. Regulatory bodies were investigating, and he was staring down the barrel of possible criminal charges. "I'm sorry," he said in a soft voice, eyes brimming with regret. "Not just for the business mess, but for everything I did to you. You were always my anchor, and I let greed get in the way." Ariana stared at him. Part of her sympathized. She remembered the gentleman who once read bedtime stories to kids at the charity center. But she also knew the damage was done. "Nicholas, I can't fix this for you, and I won't let you drag me back into a toxic situation." He lowered his gaze. "I understand. I just wanted to tell you that you and Alexander deserve better. I'm ready to give you whatever you want in the divorce. I won't fight you." Ariana felt tears prick her eyes. "What about Vanessa?" He gave a bitter laugh. "She's still around, but I see now that she's only interested in me when I'm powerful and wealthy. I think she's lining up other prospects, to be honest." Ariana should have felt triumphant at Vanessa's waning loyalty, but all she felt was an ache for what might have been if Nicholas hadn't strayed. She nodded curtly, finishing her coffee. "I hope you find a way out of this mess. For Alexander's sake." The tide turned when investigators revealed that significant sums of money were withdrawn from Nicholas's accounts, apparently by Vanessa. She had an unauthorized signature on some of the business documents, implicating her in the financial fiasco. The press jumped on the new angle, the mistress who might be the puppet master, or at least an accomplice. Nicholas confided to Margaret that Vanessa had persuaded him to shift money around just until the deals closed, but she had siphoned large chunks into offshore accounts. Soon, the authorities turned their scrutiny on Vanessa as well. Publicly, she tried to distance herself from Nicholas, claiming she was just following orders. She even insinuated that Ariana had knowledge of these dealings, a blatant lie to muddy the waters. Ariana's lawyer swiftly threatened defamation, forcing Vanessa to retract her statements. With the walls closing in, Vanessa vanished. No one knew exactly where she went. Some speculated she fled the country using the offshore funds. Others believed she was hiding out in a friend's luxury condo, trying to wait out the scandal. Regardless, her reputation was destroyed, and Nicholas was left alone to face the brunt of the investigation. During this chaotic period, Ariana found a surprising inner peace. She focused on caring for Alexander and resumed her teaching. She launched a small online platform dedicated to early childhood education, combining interactive lessons and a philanthropic mission. Donations from supporters who admired her resilience allowed her to grow the project. She realized that while Nicholas had tried to build an empire for himself, Ariana's passion for helping others felt far more meaningful and far less destructive. Her relationship with Margaret remained cordial. Jonathan apologized for not intervening sooner, offering financial support for Ariana and the baby. Ariana accepted small contributions, but politely insisted on forging her own path. The divorce proceedings were straightforward in the end. Nicholas, drained and remorseful, signed everything Ariana requested. She retained custody of Alexander and received child support payments. Their shared estate was largely swallowed by Nicholas's legal fees and settlement arrangements, but Ariana found relief in not fighting for more. She had enough to secure a stable future for her son. Then came the final blow for Nicholas. Charges were filed for financial misconduct, while some of the more severe counts were dropped when investigators found that Vanessa had orchestrated the bulk of it. Nicholas still faced potential jail time for negligence and falsifying certain documents. The trial was tense, broadcast by local news. Ariana watched from home, feeling a knot in her stomach at the spectacle of the father of her child in a criminal courtroom. Nicholas's defense team argued that he was seduced by Vanessa's manipulations and that his poor decisions stemmed from ignorance rather than malice. While the judge acknowledged Vanessa's significant role, Nicholas couldn't fully escape accountability for signing off on fraudulent documents. He received a reduced sentence, but still faced time behind bars, 18 months, with the possibility of early parole. The day Nicholas was handcuffed and led away, Ariana's phone buzzed with messages from friends offering condolences. Instead of celebrating, she found herself reflecting on how tragedy had ensnared them both. The naive dreamer who'd once vowed to help Ariana build a better world had transformed into a cautionary tale. In the weeks following Nicholas's incarceration, Ariana grappled with conflicting emotions. She still remembered him as the man who had once seemed so noble, yet she also recognized the web of betrayals, lies, and greed that had led them here. Whenever she felt pity creeping in, she reminded herself of the countless nights she'd cried alone, pregnant and abandoned. One afternoon, Margaret visited Ariana's apartment, tears in her eyes. "He's asked to see you, says he wants to apologize face to face." Ariana studied her sleeping son. "He can write a letter," she replied softly. "I'm not sure I can see him behind bars, not yet." Margaret nodded understandingly. "You have every right to feel that way." Over the next few months, Ariana poured her energy into her online education platform. She partnered with local NGOs, expanding reach to underprivileged communities. She became a voice of resilience, speaking at small gatherings about how to rebuild life after betrayal and loss. Donations increased as people resonated with her authenticity. 6 months into Nicholas's sentence, Ariana received a handwritten letter from him. "Ariana, I've had time to think about everything, what I did, who I became, and how I threw away the love we had. Every day in here, I realize that the cost of my ambition was far too high. I understand if you never forgive me. But please, never doubt that I love our son and regret losing you. You deserved better. I'm hoping when I'm out, I can be a better father to Alexander. Maybe you'll let me prove that." Nicholas. Ariana read the letter repeatedly, tears slipping down her cheeks. She showed it to Liz, who advised caution. "He's still the father. One day you might want Alexander to know him, but on your terms," Liz said gently. Ariana decided to respond. "Nicholas, I appreciate your letter and hope that you're sincere. Alexander is growing every day, and I'll do what's best for him. I won't stand in the way if he wants to know you when he's older, provided you show genuine change. For now, focus on yourself." Ariana. Not long after, news broke that Vanessa had been apprehended in Europe, charged with money laundering and fraud. The media portrayed her as the orchestrator of a complex scheme targeting wealthy investors. Ariana watched the coverage with a surprising sense of detachment. Vanessa's downfall was no surprise. She had sown the seeds of her own destruction. While Ariana felt no sympathy for Vanessa, she did feel relief that justice was being served. She recalled the day she'd first seen Vanessa by Nicholas's side. At that family event, her bold smile, the glimmer in her eyes. Now, Ariana realized it was the face of a predator who thrived on others' fortunes. By the time Nicholas was granted early parole, Ariana had rebuilt her life. She lived in a comfortable, modest house, supported by her teaching career and the blossoming educational platform. Alexander was nearly 2, walking around and babbling in bright curiosity. Ariana hoped to instill in him a humility and empathy that wealth alone could never provide. Margaret approached Ariana tentatively. "Nicholas is out. He's been staying with us, trying to piece his life together. He wants to see Alexander." Ariana hesitated, but eventually agreed to a supervised visit at a nearby park. She watched Nicholas from a distance as he knelt in the grass, shyly extending a hand to Alexander. The toddler, cautious at first, stepped closer, eventually giggling when Nicholas made silly faces. Ariana felt a lump in her throat. Nicholas looked different, thinner, yes, but also quieter, as if the storm had finally broken inside him. After some time, he approached Ariana softly, eyes downcast. "Thank you for giving me this chance." She nodded, not ready for casual conversation, but open to the possibility that Nicholas could be a responsible father if he worked for it. The contrition in his eyes hinted at genuine remorse. Over the next year, Nicholas consistently showed up for scheduled visits. He found work in a smaller consulting firm, starting from the bottom again. Ariana remained cautious, but a fragile new bond formed around Alexander's well-being. She saw that Nicholas was willing to earn trust rather than demand it. Ariana, for her part, soared in her career. Her philanthropic efforts garnered enough public attention that a few local TV segments invited her to speak about early childhood development. She found the strength to share pieces of her personal story, using it as a cautionary tale about greed, betrayal, and the power of resilience. In time, Ariana recognized that while the memory of Nicholas's betrayal would never fully vanish, she no longer harbored the same raw anger. She let go of the weight, focusing instead on raising Alexander to be a compassionate individual, one who would stand by loved ones, not trample them in the pursuit of ambition. Vanessa served her sentence in a federal prison. Rumors circulated of her trying to strike deals to reduce her time. Nicholas never inquired about her after that final unraveling. The mistress who once replaced Ariana in the spotlight ended up alone, reaping the dark harvest of her own manipulations. As Ariana watched her son take his first steps into preschool, she felt a deep gratitude. The storm that raged through her life had only made her stronger. Hard karma had indeed struck those who wronged her, but more importantly, it had transformed Ariana into a woman unafraid to stand on her own 2 feet. She had found that not all storms come to disrupt life. Some come to clear the path. Every one of us faces moments where trust shatters and hope seems lost. Ariana's journey through betrayal, heartbreak, and renewal shows us that despair can become the soil from which new beginnings grow. Watching her once glittering marriage crumble taught her the power of self-respect, the value of genuine love, and the importance of moral courage. Though she was cast aside for a time, karma had its day, revealing truth and ensuring those responsible reaped what they sowed. If Ariana's story moved you or reminded you of your own struggles, consider sharing it with someone who might need the reminder that storms do pass. Let's stand together, uplift each other, and believe in second chances, but only when they're honestly earned. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share it with friends who need that spark of inspiration. Your support makes all the difference.